Greetings and salutations, Cure fans. It's the Holy Hour podcast, the usually bi-weekly all Cure podcast. I'm Gavin, and welcome to our final Lost World Tour updates episode. Yes, this is another little bonus mini episode, but we had to conclude this wonderful experience of the Cure's Songs for a Lost World Tour, and started back in October. Wrapped up with 3 nights at Wembley Arena on December 11th, 12th, and the 13th, of course, very fittingly ending on the 13th. The initial plan was to wrap these up in our next official episode coming out, our year in review episode. But we had a couple really wonderful contributions sent in the last couple days, so I wanted to make sure that these got the proper focus and weren't just crammed into an episode that was summing up all of 2022 rather than just the finale of this wonderful tour. So if you will, join me as we recap the last 3 nights that were nothing but success in London. The Cure pulled it off, of course. I don't think any of us had any real doubts, but at the same time, we did have that little bit of scare there with Roberts, catching a cold and having a rough time in Birmingham, and then rebounded gracefully in Cardiff and had the day off. But what was going to happen the next night, the first night in Wembley? And, he pulled it off. They sounded great as they ever did, so whatever they did, they did it well, and it continued on. We almost had wondered, too, like if you nailed the first night, will the second night be right on point? We gradually start to fall apart again through the 3 nights, but nope. 3 stellar shows, wonderful set list all through. Even if you went to all 3 shows, I think you'd be very happy with the combination of songs that were played throughout the tour. No huge surprises or craziness that they decided to dump in those 3 nights, but it was just a great combination of everything they'd been doing for the past 3 months or so since starting the tour. And really just amazing set list and performance by the band. So I don't think anybody that went to those shows would have any disappointment in that. Even the people that would be like, oh, I was hoping for a bigger surprise. I mean, there would be these sets would be great if you weren't following every show, studying the set list like we're doing, of course. So, of course, you're not going to be totally surprised if you're studying every little song that's debuted and has X amount of plays. But, they're just a solid list of all 3 nights. And, like I said, even if you went to all 3, I think you would be very happy because you're seeing the few that remained in all the shows, and then or a few that were changed up from night to night. So let's dive in. Unfortunately, most of our contributions all focus on this first night, so it's going to be first night heavy, but we'll recap night 2 and 3, of course, too. So let's dive into it. The first one comes from Luke, who we heard from in Birmingham. He was there witnessing when Robert's voice started to fade and what was going to happen and the high-stakes drama that ensued of watching poor Robert battle through that set, even though it was a glorious evening in itself. Cast worry amongst the Cure community and everything. What's going to happen next? And so he was very anxious to see what happens first night in Wembley and see how it would complement his experience in Birmingham. So I will read to you now the wonderful email written to me from Luke about his night at Night 1, Wembley Arena, December 11th, London, England. Luke writes, following my trip to Birmingham for the Cure's gig there, I had to wait for 4 more days to see them again in the cavernous Wembley Arena in London. I had last seen them in the same venue for their last show of the 2016 tour and had eagerly been awaiting their return for almost exactly 6 years to the day. My hopes for the gig were high, given that my trip to Birmingham had resulted in an under-the-weather Robert struggling with his voice for much of the second half of the show. There was a great atmosphere entering Wembley Arena, with an eclectic mix of ages among the audience, many sporting Cure t-shirts and a healthy sprinkling of Cure heads and Robert lookalikes to add to the overall sense of the occasion. I caught the last 3 songs by the Twilight Sad, who had clearly put on an energetic and lively performance, thanking the Cure for having them on the tour before leaving the stage to moderate applause from the expectant crowd. At 8:15 p.m., the Cure took the stage as the thunder rang out and the simulated lightning flashed, the crowd roaring with delight as the band kicked off their emotional Alone, just as they had done every night of the tour so far. With the first song over, all fears that Robert's voice might not be back on par had been banished, and then followed a magnificent 17-song main set lasting around 100 minutes. Longer than the total length of many other bands' total shows. Although there were no tour debuts like we had in Birmingham, the band thundered through a solid set which featured some variances to the show I had seen in Birmingham. In came The Last Day of Summer, Want, and a powerful version of Hanging Garden, replacing If Only Tonight We Could Sleep, Three Menagerie Boys, and Primary. It was great to hear songs that had not been played at my earlier show. With their back catalog and the way that Robert had been mixing up the set list on this tour, the sense of not knowing exactly what might come next added to the X factor of surprise, which just enhanced the total experience for all of us that were present. The same was the case for the first encore. Instead of Cold and Charlotte Sometimes inserted between I Could Never Say Goodbye and A Forest, we got suitably atmospheric Faith, followed by a pounding, aggressively charged 100 Years. The first encore wrapped up with the classic A Forest, which, unlike in Birmingham, had much of the crowd dancing and double clapping in time to Simon and Robert's spectacular conclusion. After a short final break, we were treated to the excellent Magnificent Seven pop encore. Disappointingly, though, there was no doing the unstuck for us, but the crowd loved every song during the second encore, something that Robert had referred to throughout the show as the Sunday night disco element of the show. The second encore drew to a conclusion with the standard Boys Don't Cry, accompanied by much singing and dancing by the audience before the band finally left, leaving Robert to thank the crowd, telling them that the night had been fucking excellent, before finally exiting the stage. Although I was sad that my whole 2022 Cure tour experience was over, I was grateful that I had made it to my pair of shows and experienced the variation in set list too. I didn't get to hear Figurehead or Disintegration that the Wembley crowd were to be treated to the following night, but I was more than content with the songs that I had heard, and I just pray to the music gods that this tour will not be the last live shows the Cure ever play. Although, to use a phrase we all now know well from this tour, I realize that nothing lasts forever. Just some postscripts to the Wembley show that I thought might be interesting to note. Robert announced for at least 3 of the 5 new songs that they will not be new songs for much longer. Was this a cryptic hint that the new album will be out shortly? Or just alluding to the fact that the end of the European leg was in sight? Only time will tell, I guess. Secondly, I'm still unclear of Perry's role on this tour, other than for general camaraderie. Watching his playing in various songs, he didn't appear to be playing anything special, often just mirroring Robert or Reeves' guitar parts. I also couldn't help but feel rather sorry for him. He appeared completely isolated from the rest of the band for the entire show, with no interaction from anyone else on stage, including Robert himself. He simply came on, played his part, whatever that was, and then left again. It is great to have him back, and I hope he appears on the long-awaited new album, but it was a little odd how he appeared so left out from the rest of the band, or seemingly not part of the overall band dynamic, patently visible elsewhere on stage, particularly between Simon and Reeves. One last point, common to the 2 gigs I attended, is that I expected far more audience participation than what I witnessed. I have no idea whether it was just the good old Britishness of not truly relaxing, or maybe rather shy in demonstrating that you're having a good time. But overall, I found the audience on both shows I went to be rather subdued and tame compared to what I expected. Sure, the first few rows down by the front of the stage were totally immersed in their experience, but most of the floor at both shows stood still like statues, everyone seemingly unsure whether they were allowed to let their hair down or not. Even the two German women that I was next to at the Wembley Arena commented on this. They had traveled around Europe watching the tour, and Wembley was their 14th show. They told me that in Europe, the crowds had been far more lively and engaged, with the Toulouse, France show proving to be the most boisterous that they had been to, then followed by Paris. It was interesting to hear their views, which have also been repeated on the fan forums and Facebook pages of the internet. I guess it'll be up to the US crowds to liven things up once more when they reach the shores of the US in the 2023 tour. Come on, Robert, just announce those dates. Lastly, a gripe I need to get off my chest. Why is it that people that would have spent at least $150 for a ticket to the Wembley Arena shows over a year beforehand can't sit still through the whole show without succumbing to the need of getting up, getting out, and getting more fries, hot dogs, drinks, and generally milling around the foyer areas? For those 2 hours and 40 minutes, the world could have ended outside, and I wouldn't have even noticed. I spent that time listening to every note and every lyric, drinking up the brief time that I had with my favorite band. It perplexes me why others who had gone to the same effort as I did can't sit still for a couple of hours out of their life. Gripe over. So, in summing up, I had a truly wonderful time at both of the shows I got to see this December. The band are simply on fire and the best that they have sounded, ever. The whole production of the shows was magnificent and the sound quality was truly epic. I do hope that the Cure fans in the US and beyond get to experience the Lost World show next year, once the band have had time to enjoy a well-earned break. As for me, all I need now is the new album to drop, and then I can consider my lifelong Cure Odyssey complete. If this tour is to be, as Robert says in Alone, the end of every song we sing. All right, thank you so much, Luke, for sharing your firsthand experience. I'm so glad that you caught a show that complemented your Birmingham show wonderfully, and you were able to wrap up your whole Cure tour experience on a positive note, and really enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing all that with us, and we got something really special coming up next, too. We got our very own Patreon member, Matt Ford, sent us audio clips of his experience at night one of Wembley as well, including his special guest that he brought on with him to see the show. So let's hear what Matt had to say about Wembley night one.
Hello, my name is Matt Ford, long-time listener to the Holy Hour podcast and first-time contributor. Hello to Gavin and all at the Holy Hour, and hello to all the lovely listeners. I am... by the way, the date is the 11th of December 2022, and I'm at a hotel very close to Wembley Arena in London. Looking forward to seeing The Cure on the first of their 3 Wembley dates on this very exciting tour, very special tour. I was due to see them in Leeds on the 6th of December, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, that was unfortunately not possible in the end. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to this one very much. I didn't get any tickets for the second or third night due to other commitments, work, etc., and lack of funds. But I'm going to make the most of this one. It's a shame I couldn't get to the Leeds concert as well. Obviously I've got certain songs that I'd love to hear. We'll see what they play. I'm going to love it whatever they play, and I'm particularly looking forward to seeing the new songs and hearing them live with my own ears in the actual room instead of on a mobile phone recording. That's going to be pretty special, so I'm looking forward to that. I do have somebody with me, not in this room, he's got his own room. It's actually my dad. I did have a spare ticket for this, and it's my dad's kind of volunteered to come with me, kind of a last minute thing. He doesn't have an in-depth knowledge of The Cure. We'll speak to him a bit later, I think. So it's going to be interesting to get his perspective. He knows, like a lot of people I suppose, he knows some of the hits, but I don't think he quite realises what he's in for with this concert. And the other stuff they'll be playing, or some of the other stuff they'll be playing, and just the sheer scope of The Cure's catalogue. Right, we are just walking down towards the venue now, only a stone's throw away from the hotel, and I've got my actual dad here with me, which I still can't quite believe that he's come to see The Cure with me, but here he is. So, I'll introduce him now, well, ask him to introduce himself. Hi Dad, what is your name?
Hi Matt, my name's Stu.
Hi Stu. So,
You can call me Dad.
I'm a big fan of The Cure. You are coming to this gig with a slightly different perspective.
Yes.
What is your knowledge?
Very little really. I know the name Robert Smith, obviously.
That's a good start.
I knew they started in Crawley as kids.
They did.
And as a threesome, I believe, at the time.
Some of this may have been discussed prior to recording.
I'm familiar with their kind of poppy 80s tracks on top of the pop sort of tracks, but very little of the album work really. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, you're in for quite a treat. Well, that remains to be seen.
It does.
We'll get some perspective after the concert, but I think there's a lot to them that you are unaware of. What you are aware of is a small one aspect of what they can do and have done and are capable of.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it that yourself and many other people are tragically unaware of.
Yeah, I think anyone who's been in a successful rock and roll band for over 4 decades must be doing something right. It's not necessarily only about playing the old hits, is it? There's more to it than that.
Absolutely.
People keep coming back. So I am very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. And we were actually very close to the venue now, so we'll wrap this up shortly. There's one other thing I wanted to say, I can't remember what it was.
Any more interesting questions for me?
Not really.
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I hope, we don't really know what kind of state Robert's voice is in.
No, we don't.
After the last couple of concerts, so it'll be good to see. Well, hopefully he's at least hopefully his voice is in at least the condition it was at the last concert, and if not better by now.
I guess I'm a similar age to Robert, and I have to say that my voice has been in decline in recent years, but then I don't gargle.
You're not a singer?
Well, I
No,
have
you're
sung.
not. You're not a singer.
I have sung.
Anyway, you're older than Robert. Just saying. Anyway. Okay.
Only a bit.
Right, it is now the day after the concert, and we are currently walking on some snow-covered and frost-covered road. Ice as well. Road, so it's a bit treacherous. Let's see if we can do this without breaking a limb or something. Did you enjoy the concert?
Yes, I did enjoy the concert very much.
Did you think it was good?
Well, yes, I wouldn't have enjoyed it had I not thought it was good.
Would you recommend seeing the Cure to somebody else live?
I would, although
With the caveats?
preferably in the Liverpool area.
Oh well, that's probably not likely to happen anytime soon. Don't know when the last time they played Liverpool was, but it was some time ago. But nevertheless,
Maybe Anfield,
they don't really do stadiums.
Tottenham Park.
No, they don't really do stadiums.
Okay.
More of an arena band.
If you,
Regardless of the location, would you recommend?
well, yes, I would. I mean, as we said yesterday, I was not overly familiar with the Cure's work, and I did enjoy it a lot. I think possibly they're the type of band that the more you know about them and the more you know their work beforehand, you're definitely going to get more out of it.
Yeah.
I was kind of learning as we progressed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
For example, and I'm not sure why, but I enjoyed the first encore more than the music beforehand. Not that I didn't enjoy the music beforehand, but I was more into it by the time of the first encore.
Yeah. Yeah, because you'd been to the toilet by that point and done your business.
I went to the toilet mid
Twilight Sad.
Mid-Twilight Sad,
Yeah.
and I have to say that Twilight Sad I enjoyed it a lot more immediately after after having a shit,
Yeah.
basically.
Always helps. Yeah, it was alright. I didn't know that much about them, to be honest, beforehand.
I think they're from Glasgow,
Listen, yeah, I know that.
the posh part, obviously.
Of course. But yeah, they were okay. I was there for the Cure though.
Yeah, I was there for the Cure too.
Yeah. So you'd recommend the Cure to
Yes, so very much so.
as a live experience,
Yes, it was.
but but perhaps not to just anyone, because there's kind of two Cure audiences really. I would say there's the people who are there to hear Friday I'm in Love.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who are there to see.
It's an excellent song.
It's a brilliant song. And there's the people who are there to see songs like Faith, which is the one with the ruined abbey.
Yes, that was wonderful.
Fantastic. I'm glad that you enjoyed such deep cuts
I did.
as that.
As I mentioned over breakfast,
Yeah.
to me, once the drummer kicked in, the music seemed more powerful and hard hitting, and it went to another level for me.
Yeah. Well, I think that the song that you sat down for was the moment where it really went up a notch in terms of intensity. And not that I didn't like the stuff before, some great songs that they played before that, but the one you sat down for at night, that's where it really went up a notch in terms of intensity and tempo in some ways, and it went quite a couple of shades darker. And then by the end, I think the whole set was structured in a very deliberate way. It takes you on a journey, and by the first encore, we're into some really dark territory.
Okay.
So you had faith in that first encore.
Oh, very good.
100 Years, the one with the war imagery.
Yes, loved that.
There was the
Red Moon one.
Well, that was the last song of the main set, yeah. End song of an amazing new song. Amazing new song. There was the other new song in the first encore, I Can Never Say Goodbye, the one about his brother.
Oh yes, very poignant.
Absolutely. And I think they finished the first encore with The Forest as well, which is always a classic. So yeah, there was a poll on Twitter I saw.
Okay.
That said, which of the encores on this tour do you prefer, the first or the second? 80%, although the first encore is always altered from night to night, but it's always, deeper cuts. And 80% said they preferred the first encore
Yes.
over the hits of the second encore.
Okay, well that doesn't surprise me because
Yeah. The people that see that poll are going to be the more hardcore fans, generally speaking.
Well, I didn't consider myself to be a hardcore fan.
Well, no.
But that I don't believe I'd heard any of the songs in the first two sections at all.
No. Probably not.
But the poppy songs at the end, I was familiar with all of them except possibly one.
Yeah, maybe the walk, possibly the second one.
Yes, possibly so.
The sort of Japanese one with the kazoo and
Yeah. Which, yeah. Well,
it's not the best song.
Singles bands, obviously, yeah, smashing fine, great, super.
But the Cure aren't a singles band, although many may mistake them for being that.
Well, exactly so.
Yeah, it's interesting that you, as somebody who only really knew the biggest hits,
Yes.
actually preferred the deeper cuts, the darker stuff.
Well, I'm a sophisticated guy, and I'm at, you know.
Oh, definitely.
Your love of music didn't just happen by accident.
No, I think I got it from Mum, actually.
And where did Mum get it from, do you think?
Well, I don't know. That's another question.
Well, I came along, it was all Bee Gees and ABBA with Mum.
Oh God, that's a good point. Yeah, you were a bit of a punk in your day, weren't you?
I was a bit of a punk, yes.
Early Cure is pretty punk. So yeah, well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it as much as you did, and I'm
I did.
quite pleased that very pleased that you liked the deeper cuts, the darker stuff, as I've said.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean,
You appreciated that more, probably.
yeah, it's stuff that you would want to listen to more and
Exactly.
get a greater understanding and love of. I feel
Absolutely.
like I only kind of skimmed the surface, having heard these for the first time last night.
Yeah. Oh, you
Well-
absolutely have. The Cure has a very vast catalogue, and you've experienced a small selection of it last night over the course of nearly 3 hours.
Yeah.
But even that is still a very small selection of what they have done.
Well, apart from my personal enjoyment of it, I also gained a particular vicarious pleasure at your enjoyment.
That's
of the gig.
that's good too.
And seeing you in your element,
I was.
really loving it, soaking it up.
Of course. Absolutely. Except I wish I could have got down the front, but never mind, that's another matter.
Well, there'll be another time for you, young man.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Incidentally, I do apologise for sitting down at one stage, but
No, it's fine.
I am even older than Robert Smith.
You are an old man, so it's fine. You're allowed to sit down for one song.
Robert Smith moves around a lot on stage, and I feel, and I've been able to move around a bit, I think I would have lasted better than I did.
Well, you've been ill recently. So I'll let you off.
Thank you very much.
I'll let you off.
Very generous of you.
A fragile thing. This love is my everything. Nothing you can do to change the end.
Well, it's late evening, the day after the concert now. I'm back at home, and I am very tired after a long day of travelling. I really wish I could have stayed for the second and third nights at Wembley. Wasn't to be. I hope there are more concerts. I hope there are more tours. I hope the ROW shows are announced soon. The rest of the world shows in America and elsewhere. I hope they happen, but I hope they're announced soon, to put people's minds at rest. But I hope that beyond that there are more concerts, and I hope that this isn't the final tour. I know that a lot of people believe it is, or fear that it is. I personally don't think it is. I've got some thoughts on that. I can see why people do think it is. Obviously, the Cure has to come to an end sometime, as all things do, and nothing is forever. But I don't think this is it necessarily. I suspect that Robert and the Cure, in some form or another, may be around for a while longer yet. But like I say, I do understand why people think this might be the last tour. There's obvious themes in the new songs that we've had the absolute honour and privilege to have heard up to this point. Certain lines, certain themes in the songs of things seemingly coming to an end. But I do think, I mean, there's 2 or 3 points there. I do think that people might be, I could be wrong, but I do think that people might be jumping to conclusions, perhaps because I think maybe we do tend to kind of fear the worst at times in life. Maybe that's some kind of a defense mechanism, so it doesn't crush us so much when it actually happens. But because we're kind of mentally prepared to some degree. So maybe it's wise to be negative, but I genuinely don't think this is the end of the Cure after this tour. I think those lyrics, those lines in the songs, and some of the imagery that's being used in the new songs, I think Robert could be singing about lots of things. I think he is singing about lots of things. I think he's singing about the current state of the world as he sees it. I think he's talking about himself when he says, "I don't belong here." In End Song, I think he's saying that he doesn't recognize this world that we live in now. That's my interpretation. It's not the world that he thought he knew when he was growing up or when he was younger. I don't think he's necessarily talking about, in that song or any of the new songs, about the end of the Cure. That first line in Alone, the first line of the first song of the concerts on this tour. This is the end of every song we sing. That if we take that very literally, yes, it could mean it's the end of the Cure, but I really don't think it should be taken that literally, personally. That's my opinion, and I could be wrong. Again, he could be singing about lots of things there. And also, another point is that Robert Smith has been saying or hinting in interviews and in songs for a long time that the Cure might be coming to an end soon. There's an interview on YouTube of him. I think it's on Augury Whistle Test from about 1984, the Top era, and he's saying, "Oh, I think the Cure is going to come to an end soon." I can't remember the exact quote, but words to that effect. I think the end might be coming soon. So he's been saying that for 40 years, since after Pornography, essentially, and certain songs going back to around that time, the mid-80s onwards, I would say, could be interpreted as pointing towards that too. So I really don't think these new songs are any different from that in that sense, really. Even if he might have been aware when writing these lyrics, he may well have been, I suspect he probably was, aware that some people might interpret them in that way. But arguably he's been playing with our expectations and our emotions for 40 years on that front. So I'm not overly concerned that this is the end, and I hope that we'll get more chances to see The Cure after this tour, whether we're in America or Europe or anywhere else in the world for that matter. We know that there's at least one, well, we assume there's at least one more album coming. That's assuming it ever does actually get released. It's looking like it will be. I noticed last night that Robert actually said after, when introducing 2 of the new songs, he said, here's another new song that won't be a new song for very long. He said that twice. Now, my interpretation of that was, the album is coming out very soon. We shall see. But the other point is, most of these, I know that most, if not all of the gigs on this tour, certainly the more recent ones, at the end of each one he has said, see you again. See you again. So that's the bottom line. He wants to see us again. And we want to see him again. Anyway, it was an amazing show last night. I wish I'd been able to go to more gigs on this tour. And I really hope that there are more opportunities to in the future. But it was fantastic. I have seen some complaints that the set lists aren't quite adventurous enough or daring enough, perhaps, for some people's tastes. Yeah, I can see that argument. Some elements of the set lists have been quite predictable if you've been following them as intently as most of us listening to the Holy Hour podcast have been. The final encore, for example, certain other songs, like the first and last song of the main set. We know the pattern by now. We know which songs are dead sets and which songs might be changed for other songs. And yeah, it's been several years since certain songs have come out, if they have at all. But that doesn't mean they won't come out again. I think it's just, you get what you get, and whatever songs Robert Smith and the rest of the band want to play, that's what they're going to play on any given night and on any tour. And I, for one, wouldn't want them to play something that they don't want to play, because I don't want to see a band whose heart isn't in it. So although some songs might be more to my taste than others, there's no such thing as a bad Cure song, I don't think. There are some I don't particularly like. But I will happily watch them play almost anything. Certainly anything they played last night and have done on this tour. So you're never going to get all your favourite songs on any given concert. But it is a privilege to be able to see them in 2022 playing such brilliant music, and to be able to witness them playing these amazing new songs. And I have to say, the end song is, I mean, I'd seen the YouTube videos and heard the mobile phone recordings. I knew it was a brilliant song, but witnessing it live in person, I was moved. It just felt like what an honour to be able to witness The Cure playing brand new material that is this good. All the new songs are good, but End Song is on another level in my personal opinion. And I think it may well end up, I don't want to speak too soon, but it may well end up being up there with the best of The Cure. We'll wait to hear the studio version, I think, before making a final judgment on that. But certainly based on the live performances and the clips I've heard, it's got to be right up there, I think. And to be able to witness such a meaningful song, a very personal song, I think, for Robert, in terms of how he sees himself and his position in the world and in life, in this era, this very dark time that we live in. It's such a privilege to be able to witness them play these songs before they've even been released to the wider public. So I'm very grateful to have been able to do that, even if I could only see one concert on this tour. Okay, I've been talking for a long time, and I want to go to bed because I'm absolutely knackered. So I hope the rest of the world shows are announced soon, and I hope anyone listening to this has enjoyed any shows that they've been to, and if they haven't been to any, then I hope they get the chance to see some soon. Yeah, I'll sign off now. Bye bye.
All right, thank you so much, Matt, for sharing this experience with us. Thank you, Stu, for sharing this experience with us. What a cool experience it was for you guys, too, and just the idea of getting to see The Cure with your dad. It's come up a couple times on this tour now, and it's very touches my heart. I love hearing about this stuff, and yeah, it really means a lot and shows that the love of this band crosses many generations, and very cool. And I think Stu here is going to be converted. I think a fan for life. So good job, Matt. And like you said, better late than never, right? And hopefully you guys can do it again soon. That would be pretty wonderful. And yeah, so let's move on to, this has all been night one. So we got that second night at Wembley. Like I said, his voice still held up. The band was tight as ever. Sounded really great. As far as the set list, they added in a figurehead and Strange Day. So those were pretty special to have in the set that weren't there from the night before. And a disintegration block in the first encore there where they played Plain Song, Prayers for Rain, and Disintegration. And then even in the encore, the pop encore, Encore 2, they got the bonus track of the, not just the Magnificent Seven, but they added in Let's Go to Bed for the fifth and final time of the tour. So a little extra pop song in there for your pop encore on night 2, December 12th. And then the final night of December 13th, the last night of the Songs for a Lost World tour. Some unrealistic hopes still lingered. Maybe they'd do something crazy, play the full album or Wish or Pornography or something like that. But they pretty much stuck to the script there, and they did play the longest show of the tour, I believe. So they added a few little extras in. They capped off each little, filled in the way the set list had been going, but a little bit of all of it. They got Cold that night, M, which was one that hadn't popped up a lot on the tour, but they got M, Trust, Want, Strange Day. So this finale show definitely covered all of it. And in the first encore, they had it with I Can Never Say Goodbye into Three Imaginary Boys again, getting another play on this tour. 100 Years, Primary, in a Forest. And then capping it off with the Encore 2. Not only did they get the 7 pop songs, but they also got Doing the Unstuck. And they got a finale bonus, ending the tour with the debuts of 10:15 Saturday Night and Killing an Arab, which I love. I do feel like the audio clip I listened to, it sounded like he might have been saying Killing Another again, which I'm not a fan of. But, just the fact that they played Killing an Arab is pretty rad. Anytime they go full circle with it and end with that tune, I love it, just for tidy historical sake of coming full circle back to your first single again is pretty rad. And it's such a good closer too, and they just rock it out. And so pretty cool that they got 2 extra bonus songs. And Simon just smashed the hell out of his bass. Everybody seemed to be glowing and totally happy with the way that the tour wrapped up. And I can't imagine any fans any level of disappointment with that show. So perfect way to wrap up the whole tour and the 3-night block at Wembley Arena. But don't just take my word for it. Turns out we got one last contribution from a first-hand account that we can share with you guys. At the 0 hour we received this from Tom Burns, and Tom was kind enough to share his experience with us. Tom writes, "Though these shows aren't my first live concert experiences since lockdown, it still feels surreal to me going back to the huge crowds we had to avoid for so long. The atmosphere, the energy, and almost spiritual experience that live music can be, it's all back, and I'm so happy that it is. Me and my girlfriend, Nee, were incredibly fortunate in being able to bag tickets to 3 shows on the 2022 Lost World Tour. We were beyond excited, and I, like many Cure fans, had been frequenting Setlist and Cure forums, following along on any and all updates from this amazing tour. Unfortunately, the weeks running up to these shows did come with quite a bit of stress and anxiety due to the rail strikes, extreme weather, and flu season, and my heart goes out to anyone who sadly couldn't make the shows for any of the reasons like these. I'll keep my experience of the first show we saw very brief, as I know Glasgow has already been covered in an episode. From the moment the now 6 Imaginary Boys took stage, the joyous roar of the crowd almost obscured the sounds of rain and thunder, setting the perfect atmosphere for the start to a Cure show. I was in complete and utter awe at the passion and emotional power of this first show. And as always, the whole thing felt like a dream while I tried to absorb every moment of every song of the incredible set list. Each of the new songs were highlights for me, clearly very personal, and being within the huge soundscape the band created made me feel every bit of that emotion. Other highlights included seeing songs such as Cold, Faith, A Strange Day, At Night for the first time. All are among my favorite Cure songs. Pictures of You brought me to tears all 3 nights. Our next show was night 2 of Wembley's shows, and there were plenty of surprises and changes to the set list, including particularly dreamy performance of Charlotte Sometimes, and incredibly powerful The Figurehead, with some of the best and most intense vocals from Robert I've ever heard, and an encore including Plainsong, Prayers for Rain, and Disintegration. Highlights included Simon hugging Robert before they played And Nothing Is Forever, which Robert has mentioned on this tour as the hardest song for him to sing, which I'm sure is due to how personal this song is for him. Following this sweet moment, cheers and ahs came from the crowd, including one person shouting something along the lines of, "Simon is the best!" and Robert replying with, "He is." Another major highlight was the iconic "Rain" vocal line from Prayers for Rain, which was a perfect moment in a perfect show. We both walked out of this concert in a daze with giant smiles on our face, overwhelmed by what we had just witnessed. If there was any low point of the night, it would have been when, before the show, me and my girlfriend could have sworn we saw Roger in a face mask walking swiftly past us. I unfortunately froze and felt unable to shout "Roger" after him. But the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty sure it was Roger. And I was just so unexpected seeing him wandering around the arena that it completely caught me off guard. Though I have no idea what I would even say to any of the Cure members anyway, except perhaps just drop to my knees and chant, "I'm not worthy." The third show was unsurprisingly another unforgettable night. Trust, 3 Imaginary Boys were amazing to hear for the first time in this show, but the biggest surprise of the night was definitely the extra long 32-song set list, including 10:15 Saturday Night and Killing an Arab, to wrap up the show and the entire tour. My girlfriend says her favorite show was the final Wembley show, but it's so hard for me to decide. as each was so special and beautiful. Though Perry isn't given the spotlight at any point during the shows, the band sounded so rich and layered, so I hope he continues to be a part of the band. I feel so incredibly lucky to have had the chance to double the amount of times I've seen The Cure all in one tour. These were also the first ever Cure shows for my girlfriend. Seeing them with her made it all the more special, and some of the best days of my life. I hope this is far from the end for my favorite band. Thanks, Tom. All right, thank you so much, Tom. So glad that we were able to squeeze that in before we wrapped up not only this episode of the tour updates, but the entire Lost World Tour 2022. It's a wrap. That's about it. It ended with a bang. What can we say? And can't thank everybody enough that contributed, whether it would be in a tour updates episode or one that stretched out into a full-length episode. But we had Colleen and Dennis and Allison and John and Kevin, Luke and Alan and Mike and Wendy and Bart and Matt, Tom from the Madrid show, and of course Tom from this episode. So the two Toms, thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate these first-hand accounts. Always made it so much better and made it feel like we were right there as close as possible, and hopefully documenting this for all the future children out there that will wonder, Uncle Kermit, what was the Lost World Tour really like? Well, now they can relive it all, thanks to you guys, so appreciate it. And also just a giant thank you to everyone I talked to as these set lists were unfolding, like Eric and Coulter, even Antonio and Chaz, as we would in the early days of be texting each other constantly as the set list would be slowly unwinding. And a special shout out to Kate too. We were supposed to talk to her and get her scoop, but she was feeling a bit under the weather, as a lot of people were, as I saw a lot of familiar names in a post saying that they weren't feeling so great after their travels, and I hate to hear that. But I hope you're all in the upswing now and feeling better. I won't call you out, but hopefully everybody's feeling much better now and rebounding. And if nothing else, at least you guys got to travel and see The Cure and got ill. I didn't even go anywhere and I got sick. So so you're doing better than me. But yeah, I'm sure it was worth it, right? So anyway, we got one last episode for this year coming up. It's going to come up pretty soon right behind this too. It's going to be our special end of the year episode. And then we'll be back on track with Sundays every other week. So I'll stop flooding your podcast updates inbox or whatever you call it. And we'll get back to our nice little once every 2 weeks. So yeah, it'll be a good episode. Our year in review 2022. We'll talk about the tour. We'll talk about we're not going to quite dive into the Wish reissue because we didn't have it yet. So but we'll talk a little bit about Wish. We'll talk about all the other stuff that happened in the Cure's world in the past year, as well as the Holy Hour podcast. So thank you so much, guys out there that shared everything, not only on the tour but just throughout this year in the Cure chat world. So we'll save all our praises and thanks for that episode. So for now, we'll just say what a wonderful tour. Thank you to The Cure for giving us so much joy out there, and congrats on such a successful tour and wrapping it up, kicking ass and taking names as always. So there's a reason why we all love this band so much. They really deliver. So on that note, take it easy. This is getting close to an hour, but it's not a real episode. Just a tour update for the final time. Until rest of the world. Over and out. Talk hard.